Of Christmases Long, Long Ago is my new book arriving for the 2025 Christmas season. Find out what Christmas was like centuries ago. Sneak preview, it was weird and spooky and rowdy, kind of gross sometimes. Find it wherever books are sold in hardcover from Lions Press and audiobook from Recorded Books. It's Christmas as you've never seen it before, and it makes a great gift. I'm Brian Earl. This is Christmas Past. When Mount Ruapehu erupted in 1945, the people of the central part of New Zealand's North Island knew what they were bracing for. Mostly. It had been erupting since long before the first Polynesian voyagers settled there in the 13th century. Long before it could be named Ruapehu, or the Pit of Noise in the native Maori language. It was the largest active volcano in New Zealand, its 3 peaks towering over the central plateau, 18 glaciers, a massive crater lake filled between eruptions fed by melting snow and venting steam. That lake formed the headwaters of the Wangaehu River below. For centuries, the stories had passed from generation to generation, of rumblings that shook entire villages, of sounds like thunderclaps, of lava and steam, of air turning thick with sulfur, of water poisoned, crops ruined, lives lost. So when Ruapehu rumbled to life again in 1945, people thought they knew what to expect. It was part of the cycle of life on an island in the South Pacific where the Earth was as restless as the sea. But volcanoes don't keep calendars, and they don't care what people expect. 8 years later, Ruapehu reminded them of that, and reminded them that some Christmas stories are tragedies. At 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve in 1953, a limited express train pulled out of the station at Wellington at the southern tip of the North Island, bound for Auckland, nearly 400 miles north. The passengers settled in, the mood high, the air filled with anticipation. 285 of them heading out in the New Zealand way, off to begin their annual summer holidays on Christmas Eve. Families and friends with suitcases and wrapped Christmas presents. A pillow or blanket to catch a few hours of sleep on this overnight ride. Maybe the odd flask filled with something to make the journey a bit merrier. By morning, they'd be in Auckland, waking to Christmas Day. And if they were lucky, they might catch a glimpse of royalty. Queen Elizabeth had been crowned the year before, and now she and Prince Philip were on a 6-month tour of the Commonwealth. Just days earlier, she had stepped onto New Zealand soil for the first time, the first reigning monarch to do that. Auckland had turned out in force to see her, and some on the train hoped to do the same. The train rattled on, stopping at towns along the way with names like Ohakune and Waiaru. At each stop, some passengers would get off, completing their Christmas journeys. Others would get on, just beginning theirs. Modern Christmas and rail travel had grown up together. When Christmas as we know it now took shape in the 19th century, the railways helped give it that shape. Before the trains, distance was a barrier, a stretch of road too long, a river too wide. But the rails stitched towns together, turned days of travel into hours, and brought sons and daughters home in time for Christmas dinner. In England, the very idea of Christmas as a time for family reunions owed much to the spread of cheap rail travel. Before that, the roads were too poor, too slow, too treacherous in the winter. The trains changed that. They carried fresh food into cities for holiday feasts, delivered crates of tin toys and porcelain dolls, ribbons and tinsel, oranges and walnuts for stockings. New Zealand was different. Christmas arrived late there, brought by missionaries in the 19th century. Right around the same time the railways began threading their way through the bush, over rivers, into the hearts of growing towns. And Christmas here belonged to summer, to beaches, to road trips and yes, railway journeys, to families packing their bags and heading for the coast. The trains didn't just bring people home for the holidays, they carried them toward adventure, toward wide open spaces, toward a Christmas shaped by sunshine and travel. That's what the 287 people aboard the Limited Express were on board for that Christmas Eve in 1953. A little after 9 o'clock that evening, a 27-year-old mailman named Cyril Ellis left his home in Taihape, his wife and mother-in-law in the car beside him, making the 30-mile drive north to Rangitoa to spend Christmas with family. The road took them across the Wangaehu River at a village called Tangiwai, Maori for Weeping Waters. But when Ellis reached the road bridge, he saw that it was gone. He pulled over, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped out into the night. And then he heard it, a sound like thunder, but not from the sky, from the river, a deep, rolling roar. The eruptions from Mount Ruapehu 8 years earlier had formed a dam in its crater lake. The water kept rising and rising until that night it could rise no more. The dam broke, and when it came down, it came fast. But this wasn't water. This was what was called a lahar, a thick rushing torrent of mud and volcanic ash, of trees and boulders, of debris that gathered more debris as it went. Thousands of tons of it roared down the mountainside, a 20-foot wave on a path of destruction toward the Wangaehu, where it swept away the road bridge like a hand wiping crumbs from a table. And the lahar had slammed into the 8 support piers of the railway bridge, sending them cracking and tumbling into the raging current. The 200-foot bridge still stretched across the Wangaehu, sagging like a broken spine, its steel rails suspended 50 feet above the thundering rush. Ellis didn't have time to think, because no sooner did Ellis piece together what had happened that he heard the whistle of the Limited Express as it approached from the south. He ran. He waved his flashlight, shouting and signaling. By the time the captain saw him and knew that he had to pull the emergency brakes, it was already too late. 287 people streaming toward catastrophe, because a 460-ton train doesn't stop in an instant. The wheels screamed against the rails, metal shrieking against metal, sparks flying into the night. The train skidded for more than 600 feet before it reached the bridge, and when it did, the bridge gave way. Some passengers had already drifted off to sleep, only to be jolted awake by the sensation of falling, by the sound of water and screaming steel. The engine and the first 5 cars plunged 50 feet into the Wangaehu, the lahar tossing them like a cork, tearing through them, ripping them apart, twisting metal. The captain and firemen and nearly all passengers were killed on impact or quickly drowned in the murky lahar, which was now mixed with the train's engine oil. Others, injured or unable to fight for their lives, were swept helplessly downriver to be lost forever in the ocean. An improbable few, against all odds, would somehow survive. The 6th carriage teetered on the edge, its front half over the abyss, its rear still clinging to the rails, held in place by its coupling to the cars behind it. The people inside, miraculously, were still alive. Ellis climbed aboard the 6th carriage to help them escape. But before they could all get out, the car tipped forward, tumbling 50 feet into the Wangaehu. Somehow, those inside survived the fall and weren't engulfed into the lahar. But Ellis was now trapped in with the very people he was trying to save. He smashed a window, leading passengers to safety. Only later would they learn that one of the passengers had died in the fall, a girl who was trapped beneath a seat. By the time the rescue teams arrived, it was nearly Christmas Day. A group of local women took in some of the survivors for the night, gave them baths and food. Soldiers from a nearby army camp recovered the wounded and the dead. By midnight, the first survivors arrived at a nearby army hospital, oil and mud still in their eyes. By 4 a.m., the first bodies were laid out in a makeshift mortuary. Some families had to wipe away the grime before they could even identify their lost loved ones. Others never even got that chance. The rescue mission quickly became a recovery mission. Soldiers and volunteers combed the riverbanks, swept their flashlights over the devastation, finding bodies washed downstream, some tangled in branches, some buried in silt, finding passengers' belongings, suitcases, clothing, shoes, scattered for miles. Seats and blankets, a child's toy, still wrapped in festive paper, half buried in the silt. A battered stuffed animal slumped beside a pile of ruined luggage. Everywhere, fragments of plans of a Christmas that would never be. The rearmost cars of the train remained on the track just before the drop into the river, the passengers safe. some of them having been earlier moved into these cars when first-class seats opened up, unknowingly shifting the course of their own fates. 150 men, women, and children were killed. Tragedy always leaves behind a trail of what-ifs. What if the dam had held just a little bit longer? What if Ellis had been able to warn the train sooner? Would the disaster have been less severe, or could it have been even worse? A southbound freight train had been running late that night, forced to wait on a siding so the limited express could pass. What if the freight had been on time? In homes across the country, Christmas morning dawned with unopened presents, empty chairs at the table, and fading hope. New Zealand had only a few million people at the time. The death of a few hundred people in a single incident, almost everybody knew someone who had some kind of connection to the tragedy. The Queen, still in Auckland, addressed the nation, her voice heavy with grief.
And now I want to say something to my people in New Zealand. Last night, a most grievous railway accident took place at Tangiwai, which will have brought tragedy into many homes and sorrow into all upon this Christmas Day. I know that there is no one in New Zealand, and indeed throughout the Commonwealth, who will not join with my husband and me in sending to those who mourn a message of sympathy in their loss. I pray that they and all who have been injured may be comforted and strengthened.
Later, there would be medals for bravery, stories of impossible survival, of the 4 men engaged in a game of cards when the accident happened, who later met on a riverbank marveling at how they got there, of the man who was swept away in the current only to land more than half a mile downstream, to then walk more than half a mile back upstream to help with the rescue, of the couple who were able to save their 2 children. But that Christmas morning, there was only silence. My son is fascinated with trains. There's a railroad museum in the town next to ours, which we visit often. It includes a pretty large library of books dedicated to trains and their history, and it was on a visit there one day about a year ago that I stumbled onto Graham Stewart's book, The Tangiwai Disaster. It was the first time I had ever heard about this story, and it marked the beginning of a deep dive into it. This Christmas of 2025 will mark the 72nd anniversary of the tragedy. Cyril Ellis received a medal for bravery for his efforts that night. He went on to return to his normal life as a mail carrier. Later reports would portray him as a modest guy who wasn't interested in any special attention or accolades. He died in 1995. Christmas Past is produced in wonderful Willow Glen, California by yours truly, Brian Earl. We had music in this episode from the wonderful C. Diab. His song, Ourselves at Least, appears on the album Imero from Tonal Union Records. Thanks very much to C. Diab and also to Julie Blake at Aura for making it possible to include the song in this episode. Check this episode's show notes for links to discover more about C. Diab. There's much more to come this season, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss anything. You can always drop me a line anytime. I love to hear from you, and I try to respond to every message I get, whether you want to just say hello or share a Christmas memory. I'll be sharing those with the Christmas Past family this season in special episodes dedicated just to them. All you have to do is record yourself speaking into your phone's voice memo app and send it to christmaspastpodcast@gmail.com. Keep it reasonably short, clean, and family-friendly, and be sure to say your name and where you're from. Look for Christmas Past on your favorite social media platform. If you don't see me there, and you think I should be, reach out and let me know. And hey, if you're really feeling the Christmas spirit, why not help more people discover this show? It's as simple as telling a friend about it or leaving a rating and review. If you do leave a review, I'll send you a Christmas Past sticker, and a handwritten Christmas card is my way of saying thanks. Reach out for details. And until we meet again, may your days be merry and bright.